Hello, family members. Hope you're having a great day today. I want to talk to you about something that I've noticed in the discourse around Chappell Roan and her comments on Harris and Palestine and whatnot, and how people have gone like just overboard with the hot takes. And I find the way that people react is very much split on like generational lines, because it seems like almost all of the Gen Zers that I've seen fly into passionate defense of her, and I'm not saying that they're wrong, I'm just saying that's what I see them doing. It seems to me that they're Gen Z. They're in their 20s, you know? And I watched a few of their takes on it, and I don't necessarily fully agree or disagree or anything like that. I'm not familiar with Chappell Roan's music. Obviously, she's been talked about and like crazy online and everywhere for the past few months or whatever. She's kind of like the hot pop star, and I don't always get around to listening to new music all that often. I hate to say it. I'm 42. I'm a little stuck in my ways, right? And so, I have no actual opinion on her as an artist. I do know that as a person, people seem to think that she's, trying to lift up local drag queens, which, if you notice, I have a lot of drag queen pictures back here. Not all of them are vintage pinups. Some of them are drag queens. Like I got, Kimora Hall back there, and Simone, and, Denali, a bunch of people. Miss Cracker. I could keep going. I need to stop. Anyway, I absolutely love that. I love that she is lifting up local drag artists. So I'm inclined to favorably of her, even though I have no, true opinion, right? And when the controversy came out, and I actually took a moment to like read what she actually said, I see what's happened here. What's happened here is that she has expressed a completely valid opinion. There's nothing wrong with what she said. However, she unfortunately chose a phrase that has very, very deep and complicated connotations. And I don't know if that was purposeful or not. I don't know enough about her to know if she purposefully used this phrasing or if it was just an inadvertent. But I have a feeling that to Gen Z, this phrase just doesn't hit the same way as it does for millennials and for Gen X and for boomers and the greatest generation and all of us that lived through all of the past 25 years. And it's both sides. If she had never used the phrase both sides, I think the discourse would be so different. Because the way that a lot of people read it, and this is not the correct way, she did not in fact say this, is that she said that both sides were equally bad. And she did not say that. She said that there were problems on both sides, which is not wrong. I feel like, personally, I would not say that, and I would not agree that that would be the right thing to say in that context, but it's a perfectly valid opinion. And the reason why it rankles so deeply is this is how we got into this mess with Trump in the first place. Is there's so much political apathy, and it's encouraged by this false idea that there is an equivalence In 2016, we were just so frustrated with people trying to make, you know, Clinton's negatives as significant as Trump's negatives. And it felt like we were screaming, hey, you guys, I know you don't like her. You don't have to like her, but she is competent. He is incompetent. He is going to mess things up. And we have the Supreme Court pick hanging over us. And if he wins, Roe v. Wade is probably going to be overturned. We all knew that in like 2015 and 2016. All of the people who were really, truly, passionately fighting to stop this, you know, juggernaut of shit, basically, that we knew was going to happen if Trump won. And I cannot tell you the depth of despair that I had. I can't. It was so upsetting because I knew what was going to happen. I knew that this was going to lead to hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of deaths, because the policies that he would enact were going to be so heartless and cruel, and he wouldn't care who died along the way. That's why he doesn't care about abortion or abortion bans. He doesn't care that abortion bans kill people. He just doesn't. You know, he thinks it's something that he can negotiate on. Like, well, a lot of people don't like 6 weeks, and we can't have no restrictions. So what about 15 weeks? That sounds so reasonable. Except it's not, because that's not how health works. It's not how people's bodies work. I've made multiple videos about this, but I will repeat again. Late-term abortion is not the demon people make it out to be. It is usually someone in very tragic circumstances, especially when you consider that they are a very small minority of people who ever get abortions. We're talking a very small number of people who are going through the worst moments of their lives in a lot of cases. You know, they've just found out that their baby has a fetal anomaly. They've just found out that there's extreme, risk to the life of the mother and the child. The pregnant person has some sort of, horrible health crisis unrelated to the pregnancy. There's any number of really tough, hard reasons why we don't need to have the law interfering here. It needs to be doctors and patients making the decision, and not some old stuffy guy in a chamber of the government trying to be like, I want to win political points, okay? All right, I'm so off track. I'm sorry. I'll go back. This is the truth, though. This is why I think a lot of millennials and boomers are reacting the way they are to Chappell Roan, because it feels so similar to the discourse that we heard in 2016. And though the circumstances are so very different, we are still in the same place that we were. We are at the precipice of falling off of a cliff. And there are people like me who have been screaming it from the mountaintops for years, maybe even decades at this point. And it feels like people get distracted by little details sometimes to the point that they can't see the what's really riding on it. And that's not really true. I mean, for the fact of the matter, especially in Chappell Roan's case, it's not a little detail. You know, I think that it's perfectly valid to have extremely strong negative emotions about the current administration and their handling of what's going on in Gaza and Palestine in general. It's just... I think the way that Gen Z comes at this issue of Palestine, it reminds me a lot of when I was a kid, probably middle school aged or something, and I read a book called Zlata's Diary, and it was much like Anne Frank's diary, which I've read multiple times. It's a wonderful read. Terrible, but wonderful, you know, the implications. But anyway, Zlata's Diary is a girl who lived in Bosnia, and it's her story of living through war. And it always really touched me. And lately I've been listening to a lot of the Cranberries. You know, most people know like Zombie and whatnot. The album that came out after that had a song called Bosnia. And I was listening to it tonight. And it could be about Palestine so easily. I mean, you substitute out Bosnia and Sarajevo for Gaza or the West Bank or Palestine, Lebanon even, you know. It's a difference in priorities. It's a difference that is so hard to reconcile. I was watching a video earlier today by Be Kind Rewind, one of the like best YouTubers, and it was about Eartha Kitt and when she got invited to the White House, and she believed she was going to a serious policy luncheon where she was going to go and talk about serious issues that she both had insight in and was, you know, actively working to, you know, address poverty and violence and things like that, you know. And when she got there, she realized that it was basically a photo op, that wasn't serious. And she was quite frustrated by that. And when the president came in the room, she, you know, just kind of popped up and asked him a question, a serious question about what the luncheon was supposed to be about. And he gave her some nonsense answer and walked away. And that apparently offended the first lady so much that she like obsessed about Eartha Kitt for the rest of the dinner. And then like when Eartha Kitt was just asked a question, wanted to like speak at a luncheon she was invited to and was given the opportunity to speak and waited her turn and spoke, for some reason they decided to make a whole thing out of it. And I've tried several times to watch that video through and I just can't, because the aftermath, the way they treated her is so horrible. But it's the same thing, isn't it? It's the people on the ground and the establishment at odds with each other. Because in a lot of ways, Eartha Kitt and Lyndon B. Johnson and Lady Bird Johnson agreed on a lot of things. You know, they're both very pro-civil rights. But when you get so high into the political establishment, there's a lot of disingenuousness, obviously. I mean, politicians lie, hot take, right? But like, there's a lot of performativeness. You know, people kind of go through the motions of things because it's not necessarily important to them, but it may be important to some constituent, some voter. I watched a lot of, response to the DNC from like real leftists, people who truly are left or at least very progressive. And there was a lot of like indignance and how kind of like hokey it was in a way. But it's like that the DNC is not for me. It's not, well, it might be for me. Yeah, it's probably for me. I probably could say it's for me. It's for a broad coalition. It's trying to get the like committed Democratic base excited and maybe pull in a few, people who are undecided or not traditionally within the coalition. It's not for people like, say, Sam Cedar. They're not trying to impress someone who has that depth of knowledge and would like to discuss nuance and issues that people just don't want to address. Like, I feel like sometimes we forget is that politicians have to serve a broad coalition. And so sometimes they will put on facades in order to appeal to certain parts of the constituency, because if you don't have power, you can't make changes. And so there's a lot of compromises people have to make to get to the level of a Hillary Clinton or a Kamala Harris or, anybody who gets to that level of politics has had to play some of the games that you have to play to get there. And I think that Gen Z just doesn't have time for that. They don't want to have that performative, jingoistic crap, and good on them, honestly. But like, it just, I have no problem fully endorsing Harris. I got the sticker up there for a reason, okay? I fully believe that she would be an incredibly good president compared to any other option that we have, any other viable option we have. There is no other viable option but her. And I feel like anything that muddies that discussion right now in this moment when it's so important that people actually go out and vote, because at the end of the day, if people vote, we don't have to worry about stupid stuff like what Trump might do, because the majority of people in this country are not for the stuff that he wants. And so, and it's not just Trump and Harris. I'm talking about on every level, from local politics to state politics and onward. We need people to go and vote, even if they don't vote for president, just to vote for those down ballot races. It's so important. We just need every person we can get out in every state. They like to talk about swing states. You know what? If you're not in a swing state, your vote is still extremely important to your local municipality and to your state. And you need to freaking go vote. It's important. Vote by mail if you're like me and you're disabled and you can't go out and do it. Vote. Okay? And I feel like people hear things from people like Chappell Roan, who is making a completely normal, rational decision to say, I don't feel comfortable to, endorse anybody in this circumstance because I have real legitimate concerns with any option that's in front of me. That's perfectly understandable. I disagree. I don't feel that way, but you know what? That's not a invalid way of looking at things. But I see why so many people reacted so strongly and so negatively to that, because it feels dangerous. It feels like it's telling people, don't worry about it. It's not that important. Both sides are equally bad. There's no good option. And the practical reality is there is a good option. And there's two options, and one of them is at least middling good. And the other option is complete disaster. And I don't hold it against Chappell Roan that she can't passionately beg people to go vote for Kamala Harris, but I feel like I can, you know? However, a lot of people who feel like me are unable to hear people like her who have that opinion and not feel threatened. Because on some level it is threatening. You know, if she encourages enough people to just check out and think, oh, well, I can't do this, it's possible it could cause something to happen that we don't want to happen. But if that happens, is that her fault? No. Because she's a human being that's allowed to express her own opinion. And I didn't hear her saying, well, nobody else should go vote or anything like that, you know? So I feel like there's just a little grain of a real fear that older people, millennials and boomers, are glomming onto in her statement that completely baffles Gen Z. That they're like, what she said is perfectly understandable. And I bet a lot of them actually fully agree with her too. I think that's part of it. Because, you know, the way that Gen Z looks at Palestine, at least, you know, left-leaning Gen Z or leftist Gen Z looks at Palestine, I think is extremely different than the way that people of my generation and older look at it, because we were fed a lot of Zionist propaganda all of our lives. And it really didn't start breaking through until we had cell phones and people could start recording things and sharing stuff. And it wasn't just with this latest conflict. If you watch Sean's Palestine video, the YouTuber Sean, he'll talk about when he first kind of realized that the Zionist propaganda was misleading, was when he was watching a video of Israelis partying as they watched Palestinians be bombed and killed. You know, innocent people dying, and they were having a party. And we were always told, growing up, I was always told that it was a both sides thing, that they both had, you know, reasons to hate each other, both had reasons to believe they had claim on the land, and it was sort of an unsolvable problem that was too big and tied to ancient, you know, conflicts between different religions and whatnot. And Sean describes how at that point he realized that it wasn't a conflict between two equally culpable sides, that there was a lopsidedness to it. And it's one of those things that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I think that a lot of people who are in Gen Z see it. They weren't given nearly as much Zionist propaganda probably growing up as we were. And then on top of it, they actually got to see with their own eyes on social media, on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, wherever, innocent children, innocent people be brutalized by a power that has them completely under their thumb. And so the narrative that it's two equal sides at war with each other just does not fly with Gen Z. They know better. They know that it's an occupier who is oppressing a people who they would rather not be there. And I feel like a lot of times Zionists, when they hear things like this, their initial knee-jerk reaction, I've even gotten comments like this on my Palestine video, it's this, you don't know what you're talking about. You need to educate yourself, blah, 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 blah. Because they need to believe that. They need to believe that anyone who disagrees with them is just ignorant and that there isn't a valid argument that they're just not listening to. They need to believe that Gen Zers and Chappell, Roan, and people like that who are very openly supportive of the Palestinian people and very critical of the Biden-Harris administration and how they've handled this conflict, they need to believe that they're ignorant. Because if they aren't ignorant, if the people who they disagree with have really valid points, they might need to do some self-reflection. They might need to admit to themselves that they were wrong. And people hate that. People hate anyone who ever points out that they're wrong on any level. They just can't stand it. And that's where we are. That's why we're at an impasse. We have the old guard who grew up with the Zionist propaganda because media was limited and we couldn't see it. They were able to more effectively lie to us about what the reality was in Gaza and the West Bank before social media, before cell phones. And so that's what shaped boomers. Like, I don't know. I guess probably Harris isn't a boomer. I think she's probably Gen X. But, Biden definitely is a boomer, or at least, I don't know. Is he a greatest generation? I think he's a boomer. He's old. He grew up with a lot of Zionist propaganda, let's be honest. And he actually knows some of the Zionists. He's like, they've given it to him to his face, okay? So I get why he's so dead wrong on this. And it's upsetting because I do believe that in general he's a pretty moral person, but he is really not moral in this circumstance. And I can't blame people who see the suffering in Palestine and understand that Harris is part of that administration, and it's possible that she will just continue the same policies that he has foolishly enacted over this past year. But I also very passionately believe that Donald Trump would do a far worse job handling this. That whatever he would do would be more violent, more cruel, more pro-Zionist, more anti-Palestine, And so that's the conflict, right? What priority is more important to you? Is avoiding the possibility of all of the horrible things another Donald Trump presidency could throw at us? Is that your priority? Or is calling out the reality of Palestine and the genocide that so many people don't want to name? They don't want Palestinians there. And they are trying to get them to leave. That's genocide too. You know, they don't have to kill every single Palestinian for it to be genocide. They're trying to claim the land that those people live on as theirs and move those people out because of their ethnic identity. That is genocide. And I don't know. I understand the priorities are so contentious. You know, I understand why people want so badly for everyone to have the same priorities as they do. But we do live in a democracy. We have to find some way to acknowledge that, that contradiction, that conflict, and deal with it. And I wish that we had the maturity as a society to be able to have these types of discussions, you know? We get so lost on little things, you know, because we have these 24-hour news stations that basically have to repeat the same news over and over again, but put it in different iterations, right? And so you get these same messages echoed over and over again. And if somebody is like super plugged into those channels, they could hear the same message so many times over and over again. It's hard for them to doubt that it's true. And right now, legacy media, even left-leaning legacy media, is not naming this genocide as a genocide, generally. And so I think that's part of what distorts the priorities of people, including maybe Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. You know, I think that there's a little bit of an echo chamber thing here where the people who want to believe the propaganda, the both sidesism that, you know, some ancient unsolvable conflict and, you know, Israel has a right to defend itself. Does it? Why is the state